Program to honor our veterans today. Veterans Day is a time when we remember and celebrate the men and women who have served in the armed forces.
Good morning. Or perhaps I should say, I've been wanting to do that for a long time. Forgive me this morning if I have to use some notes, but my memory is not quite as good as it used to be. I'm approaching my 77th birthday in January. So. As the young man said, I was born in Southern California in 1947. I grew up in a culture where the aftermath of World War II had a significant impact on our daily lives. Living near Ontario Airport in Southern California, there were many surplus World War II aircraft parked all over the airport, and so it was a visual reminder that we had been to war. My dad had served in the Army Air Corps and was trained to be an aircraft mechanic on P-51 Mustangs. After the war, he returned to the Hispanic community where he had been raised and returned to the grape fields to perform labor with the rest of his people. But he soon got the opportunity to utilize his military training as an aircraft mechanic, which led to a long career in aviation and aerospace industry. My dad lived through the transition from piston engine aircraft to jet aircraft to missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, the space shuttle, the SR-71, the F-117, and he was there for all of those and had the privilege of working on all of those aircraft. So I grew up with a great sensitivity to the military and to aviation in particular. In fact, my dad was a member of the crew for an F-106 fighter jet that to this day holds the world speed record for a single engine aircraft. I'm very proud of that. As a result of the skills he learned in the military, our family benefited immensely. And we had the opportunity to be part of the American dream. We were never rich, but we were never poor. I am therefore grateful to be born in the country where there is freedom and opportunity to pursue our dreams. I graduated from high school in 1964. Then after 2 semesters at the local junior college, and I had earned a 1.9 GPA. In case you don't know, that's bad. And so I followed the guidance counselor's suggestion to take a year or 2 off, just kind of get my head together and find out what I wanted to do. However, at the age of 18, I was unemployed, and having grown restless living at home, I became very weary of my mom telling me what to do. So I decided to break free and enjoy my freedom as an adult. I joined the Army, where everybody told me what to do. Well, I loved basic training at Fort Ord, California, and I got to play Army for real. I was rather immature as an 18-year-old, as I had already proven. Nevertheless, I was selected to be a squad leader in basic training at Fort Ord. Moving on to advanced individual training at Fort Bliss, Texas, I was again selected for leadership position and became a platoon sergeant, wearing temporary stripes. My AIT training as a Hawk missile fire control operator lasted about 12 weeks, and I did well. As a reward for being the honor graduate of my AIT class, I was promoted to Private E2. That's good. I thought, that was easy. At this rate, I'll be an officer by the end of the year. And it was so. While I enjoyed teaching new recruits how to fire surface-to-air missiles, I decided to apply for officer candidate school. I was accepted, and in July of 1966, I shipped off to Fort Sill, Oklahoma as a member of the U.S. Army Artillery and Missile Officer Candidate School Class 1-67. At 19 years old, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the field artillery in December of that same year. Successfully completing the OCS experience was one of the greatest achievements of my life. Of the 120 or so men who started our class, only about half of us graduated. During OCS, I grew up fast, and I learned many of the life principles that affect my life now, even who I am today. I was subsequently assigned to Fort Carson, Colorado, as part of a unit preparing to deploy to Vietnam. In June of 1967, I was offered the opportunity to go to Ranger School, which I successfully completed in September of that year. This was another life-changing experience for me, in which I faced challenges and opportunities I had never faced before. Those principles still affect me to this day. Just ask my wife every time we watch a war movie. Upon my return to Fort Carson, I called the Pentagon, and I volunteered to go to Vietnam. In October of 1967, I arrived in Vietnam as a 20-year-old second lieutenant in the 1st Cavalry Division. During the next 2 years, I served as a fire direction officer, an artillery forward observer, executive officer, battalion liaison officer, battery commander for Alpha Battery 1st of the 77th Artillery, and lastly, the officer in charge of base defense for the 1st Cavalry Division headquarters. During that time, I participated in many combat operations, including Operation Pegasus, the battle for Quezon, the Quezon Marine Base. I flew hundreds of hours in helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft and directed countless airstrikes, naval gunfire, and combat assaults in support of the units of the 1st Cavalry Division. Among the highlights for me, though, still being a bit immature, was being able to direct an artillery mission from the front seat of a Huey Cobra. That was cool. Now what I'm about to say may not sound very humble, but the fact is, I was very good at what I did, which was directing artillery and naval gunfire and airstrikes in support of infantry troops engaged in combat. I therefore had the respect of the men I served with, but it's not a very marketable skill for a civilian. I saw friends die and be terribly wounded. There were many moments of terror, intense chaos, and violence, but that's what war is. I would not wish it on anyone. I left Vietnam for the last time in December of 1969 as a captain. I'm very grateful for having had the privilege of serving my fellow Americans, all of you, and honoring my family with my service. But there is an important question that I have yet to answer, and that is, why? Why did I volunteer for the Army? Why did I volunteer to go to Vietnam? Why did I volunteer to serve 2 more tours of duty in the middle of a war, having already completed the full year of service and coming so close to death so many times? Seeing good men die is not an easy thing to experience. And it has taken many years for some of those images to be able to fade from my memory. So then why? The answer for me is quite simple. Having grown up in the post-war culture of the 1950s and 1960s, I came to appreciate the sacrifices made by so many brave Americans. A lot of good men and women have died in the service of their country. And what I realized, and what became a driving force in my young life, was simply that freedom is not free. I was compelled to earn my freedom and not just take it for granted at someone else's expense. In the early 60s, I didn't really care about the politics of the Vietnam War. The decision was that of those people in Washington at the highest level of the government. It wasn't up to me. Rather, I saw it as an opportunity for my generation to contribute, in me, through my service, to the preservation of our country's freedom. I could not sit back and let someone else make the sacrifice necessary to preserve freedom for me. On my return from Vietnam, I was unfazed by the political turmoil. I didn't really care. I had no need for someone to say to me, "Thank you for your service." Although nowadays, I consider it an expression of honor and respect. It is a privilege to give and receive that expression from my fellow citizens, and especially my fellow veterans and active duty men and women. Rather, I served in the military to serve the debt I owed, those loyal and patriotic citizens who have served our great country to preserve the wonderful gift of freedom. When I returned from having served my country, I felt very strongly that I had done my part to earn my freedom in a very personal and meaningful way. As a boy, I recited the Pledge of Allegiance. I was very happy to hear it here this morning. I recited it every day, and I still embrace the principles of one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I have grown older and wiser, my political sensitivities have evolved. And I look back with disappointment at many of the decisions made by those in positions of responsibility within the government. They've not always been consistent with the ideals found in the Pledge of Allegiance. However, I have also come to realize that the laws of the land do not guarantee me total and complete freedom. Indeed, I have come to another one of those surprisingly or supremely important and life-changing realizations. That is that true freedom can only come in a right relationship with my Creator. And while for many years I thought I knew what freedom was, it was not until I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ in 1975, July 8th to be exact, that I have begun to appreciate what true freedom is. I stand before you. Hold on one second, let me stand up here. I stand before you as a free man, free in every respect, and for all of you who have served or who will serve in the military or even as a teacher of our young children. I salute you and thank you for your service. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my journey.